They say the most dangerous threat to national security isn't always a foreign agent with a briefcase. Sometimes it's just a ghost in the machine of your own life. Jackson found the ghost sitting on his credit report, wearing his face and spending money he had never earned, threatening to burn down everything he had built before he even turned 25.
For Petty Officer Second Class Jackson Tyler, life finally had a rhythm that made sense. He stood on the balcony of his shared barracks in Naples, Italy, the salt air of the Mediterranean mingling with the faint, metallic scent of the naval base. Below him, the world was a choreographed dance of gray holes and white uniforms. For a boy who grew up in a house where the electricity was a luxury and the check is in the mail was a mantra of despair, this military precision was a sanctuary. In the Navy, Jackson had found a world where cause and effect were absolute. If you shined your boots, they glowed. If you studied the manuals, you were promoted. If you showed up on time, you were respected. He had worked his way into the intelligence community, a role that required a mind like a razor and a background as clean as a fresh sheet of paper. He was the golden boy of his unit, currently being vetted for a top-secret clearance that would take him to the Pentagon. It was the ultimate escape velocity from his past. He felt the weight of his uniform not as a burden, but as armor. He had spent his childhood dodging bill collectors at the front door in Jacksonville, learning to recognize the specific engine idle of the process server's car. He had promised himself he would never live that way again. He was saving money, building a life of quiet stability, and finally feeling like a man who owned his own name. Then came the Tuesday that broke the world. It started with a simple tap on the shoulder from his department chief. The look in the chief's eyes wasn't the usual stern approval. It was a distant, cold pity. Jackson was told to report to the base security office immediately. He walked through the sun-drenched base, but a sudden, inexplicable chill settled into his bones. The security office was a windowless concrete bunker, tucked away from the picturesque views of the bay. Inside, the air was stagnant, smelling of burnt coffee and the ozone of overworked printers. Jackson sat in a hard plastic chair across from a civilian investigator named Miller. Miller didn't look like a man who enjoyed his job. He looked like a man who was tired of being disappointed by human nature. Miller pushed a manila folder across the desk. It was thick, bulging with printouts. He didn't say a word at first. He just let Jackson look at the folder, which felt as heavy as a lead weight. When Miller finally spoke, his voice was a flat drone, reciting a list of financial crimes that sounded like a foreign language to Jackson. $65,000. The number hung in the air like a physical blow. Miller detailed the wreckage 6 credit cards, all maxed out and in various stages of default. 2 personal loans from predatory lenders, utility bills and collections, a credit score that had cratered into the low 300s. Jackson felt a bizarre sense of vertigo, as if the floor had suddenly turned to liquid. He told Miller there was a mistake. He explained, with a voice that cracked, that he didn't even own a credit card. He lived on his base pay. He was a saver. Miller flipped to the second page of the report. The accounts hadn't been opened in Naples. They had been opened in Jacksonville, Florida, starting almost the exact week Jackson had stepped onto the bus for boot camp 4 years ago. The social security number was correct. The birthday was correct. The signature on the digital applications was a rough approximation of his own. The investigator explained the cold reality of national security. To the Department of Defense, a man with $65,000 in debt he didn't know about was either a liar or a target. Desperate people sell secrets. Indebted people are compromised. Jackson's clearance wasn't just being denied. His current secret status was being revoked. Without it, he was a man without a trade. He would be discharged administratively separated and sent back to the very poverty he had spent 4 years escaping.
Have you ever looked at a document that had your name on it, but told a story that wasn't yours? How do you defend your identity when the evidence says you are someone you don't even recognize?
Jackson returned to his barracks, but the armor of his uniform felt like it was suffocating him. He spent the next 72 hours in a fever dream of international phone calls and digital paper trails. Because of the 6-hour time difference, he had to stay awake until the early hours of the morning in Italy just to catch the opening of business hours in America. He sat in the dark, the blue light of his laptop illuminating a face that had aged 5 years and 3 days. He called the banks. He navigated the automated hold music that cheerful, synthesized jazz that felt like an insult to his anxiety. When he finally reached the fraud departments, he was met with the weary skepticism of people who heard it wasn't me every hour of every day. He demanded copies of the statements. When the PDFs finally arrived, he opened them with the dread of someone looking at a crime scene. The purchases were a map of a life he knew too well. The money hadn't been spent on luxury cars or international travel. It had been bled out in the mundane rituals of suburban survival. There were charges for the electric company in Jacksonville, groceries at the local Publix, hundreds of dollars at TJ Maxx and Marshall's, a new transmission for a 10-year-old Honda Civic. The Honda Civic, his mother's car. Jackson stared at the screen until his eyes burned. He remembered his mother, Elaine, standing at the bus station when he left for the Navy. She had cried, holding him tight, telling him how proud she was that he was going to be the one who made it. He realized now that as he was stepping onto that bus to build a future, she was already reaching into his pocket to pay for her past. She had stayed in the house he grew up in. She was the one who checked the mail. When the pre-approved credit card offers started arriving for the young sailor with a guaranteed government paycheck, she didn't see a son's future. She saw a lifeline for her own sinking ship. She had used his identity like a second chance at life, never considering that she was spending the very thing he needed to survive. The confrontation happened at 2:00 a.m. Naples time. Jackson sat on his bunk, the barracks silent around him. He dialed the familiar number. When Elaine picked up, her voice was warm and sugary, the voice of the woman who used to make him cocoa when the heat was turned off. She called him Jackie Boy. She asked if the Italian sun was as beautiful as the postcards. Jackson didn't offer any pleasantries. He read the name of the first credit card and the balance of $12,000. The silence on the other end of the line was more honest than anything she had ever said to him. It wasn't the silence of confusion. It was the heavy, loaded silence of a cornered animal. Then came the performance. Elaine didn't apologize. She didn't beg for forgiveness. Instead, she pivoted into a narrative of martyrdom. She talked about the years she spent raising him alone. She talked about how hard it was to keep the roof over their heads while he was off seeing the world. She claimed she had only borrowed his credit to tide things over, fully intending to pay it back when her latest side hustle, a multi-level marketing scheme involving alkaline water, finally took off. She weaponized his own success against him. She told him he was selfish for caring about a silly number like a credit score when his own mother was struggling. She wept with a theatrical intensity that Jackson had once found moving, but now found repulsive. He realized with a chilling clarity that she didn't see him as a person. He was just an account to be balanced, a resource to be exploited. He hung up while she was still mid-sentence, the sound of her sobbing echoing in his ears like static. He realized that his mother wasn't just a poor bookkeeper. She was a thief who had stolen the only thing he had truly earned his reputation. The next morning, Jackson went to the base legal office to meet with a JI officer, a military lawyer. The room was lined with law books, their leather spines representing a world of rules and consequences. The officer, a captain with a weary but kind face, laid out the only two paths available to Jackson. The military, the captain explained, is a machine of documentation. To the Navy, the debt was Jackson's until a court or a police report said otherwise. Path 1, Jackson could accept the debt. He would be discharged from the Navy for financial irresponsibility. He would return to Florida with $65,000 in high-interest debt and no job. He could spend the next 20 years of his life working 3 jobs just to pay off the interest on his mother's groceries and retail therapy. He would keep his relationship with his mother, but he would lose himself. Path 2: he could file a formal affidavit of identity theft. This was a legal document that would trigger a criminal investigation. He would have to name his mother as the primary suspect. He would have to hand over the phone records, the statements, and the evidence he had gathered. The banks would clear the debt from his name, but they would pursue Elaine for every cent. At her age, with her history, she would likely face significant prison time. Jackson spent the next 3 days in a state of paralysis. He walked the streets of Naples, watching families eat dinner together in the piazzas, wondering if any of them were built on the same foundations of lies that his was. He thought about his mother's face. He thought about the light-up shoes she bought him when he was 7, probably with money she didn't have then, either. But then he thought about the civilian investigator's office. He thought about the Pentagon. He thought about the man he wanted to be, a man of honor, a man who didn't live in fear of the mail. He realized that, by protecting his mother, he was actually just enabling her to destroy him. If he didn't stop her now, she would do this to anyone else she could.
If the cost of your future was the criminal record of the person who raised you, would you have the strength to sign the paper? Or would you let the ship go down, hoping to salvage a relationship from the wreckage of your own life?
Jackson walked into the legal office on the 4th day. His hand didn't shake as much as he expected when the captain handed him the pen. The paper was crisp, the ink black and unforgiving. He wrote her name, Elaine Tyler. He detailed the dates. He listed the accounts. With every sentence, he felt a strange, cold weight lifting off his chest, replaced by an even colder void. He wasn't just filing a report, he was performing a surgical amputation. He was cutting the only family he had left out of his life to save the person he was becoming. The fallout was a slow-motion explosion. The banks, armed with the police report, moved with predatory speed. The debt was frozen, then slowly scrubbed from his record. His security clearance investigation was reopened, and after 6 months of invasive interviews and polygraphs, he was cleared. He got the orders to the Pentagon. But the letters from Florida were different now. They didn't come from his mother. They came from aunts and cousins he hadn't spoken to in years. They called him a traitor. They told him he was the reason Elaine was facing 5 years in a state penitentiary. They told him that money shouldn't come before blood. Jackson didn't reply to any of them. He realized that their definition of blood was one way. They wanted him to bleed so she could stay comfortable. 3 years later, Jackson sat in a high-rise office in Arlington, Virginia. Through the window, he could see the silhouette of the Pentagon. His credit score was an 8810, a perfect, sterile number that represented his reliability to the world. He owned a condo. He had a retirement account. He was, by every metric of the American dream, a success. But the trauma of the betrayal had left a permanent scar on his psyche. He was a man who checked his credit monitoring apps 3 times a day. He didn't have a single recurring subscription. He didn't track in a spreadsheet. He lived with a hypervigilance that made it hard to form deep relationships. He looked at everyone, friends, partners, colleagues, and wondered what they would do if they had his social security number. He had learned the most expensive lesson of all, that financial freedom isn't just about the balance in your bank account. It's about the sovereignty of your own identity. He had paid $65,000 in emotional capital to buy his life back, and while the debt was gone, the interest would be paid in a lifetime of looking over his shoulder.
Jackson Tyler saved his career, but he became an orphan of his own making to do it. Every time he swipes his card today, he still feels a phantom flinch, a quiet part of his soul waiting for the transaction to be declined. Not because of the money, but because he's still waiting for the ghost of his past to find a way back into the machine. The story of Jackson Tyler is more than a warning about credit scores or security clearances. It is a testament to the fact that financial health is often the foundation of personal freedom. We all face moments where the road ahead is blocked by obstacles we didn't create, whether it's the mistakes of our past or the actions of those we trusted. Thanks for watching. Subscribe and share our story. We're here to plan for better adventures together.